Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Nik Collection 2018 by DxO. Today this webinar will be presented by me, Jochen Kohl. I'm a German-based photographer, so sorry I'm not a native speaker, so if there are any faults in pronunciation or whatever, I feel sorry for that. But I hope I will guide you well through the next hour of our webinar, the first steps with the Nik Collection by DxO. After the webinar, we have an open question and answer round, so please feel free to type in your questions on the GoToWebinar control panel, but I will only answer at the end of the webinar. So let's start. First thing to know when you're new to the Nik Collection is most of you will open it from a host application. And what are the typical host applications we got? We got Photoshop, Capture One, DxO PhotoLab, and Lightroom. No matter which of these host applications you're using, the Nik filters working exactly the same after you open them. We will start with Lightroom because I think most of you guys will use Lightroom as a host application to start the Nik filters. After you decide an image and you choose one, you got up here in your toolbar from Lightroom the way Edit, File, and if you start with the HDR effects, we will see later on, it's an export with presets. So only here you will find the HDR Efex Pro 2. And if you slowly go through here, you will find then, of course, the edit in on the photo, where you can reach the other Nik filters. Analog Efex Pro 2, Color Efex Pro 4, Dfine 2, the Sharpener Pro, the raw pre-sharpener. We won't talk a lot today about the raw pre-sharpener because I think today's raw converter is doing a good job, so you might not need them well, but we will talk about the output sharpener, Silver Efex Pro 2, and Vivezza. For me, the usual workflow, if I have a noisy image like this here as an ISO from 25,600, I would start using Dfine as my first Nik tool to edit an image. So you select your image, you go to Photo, Edit in, and you choose Dfine 2. After you've done this, you see here you got your file options. So the way you want to open the file using a Nik filter. I would advise you to use it as a TIFF with the white color scale like an Adobe RGB, a 16-bit. The resolution you can change later. This is for pixel-based image only and metadata. Edit a copy with the Lightroom adjustment, so you can of course first do your normal raw editing before you open Dfine 2. After you're opened, you see it's creating a TIFF file, and after this happens, we got our filter Dfine 2. What's doing automatically after opening it in the automatic mode, it's analyzing the image and straight away finds different parts of the image where it is using its noise reduction. Most of the time, you might not need more. If you need more, you can go to the reduce. But before we do that, I will show you how this panel of the Nik filters work because they're mostly the same. On the top, we got the view, full-size viewer. We got a before and after view. We got a side-by-side view. We can switch around in the middle. All this is the same, no matter which Nik filter you're using. The same up here, select tool, zoom tool, and this one simply is the background. This one is a removing tool. Down here depends on which filter you got different kind of settings. For Dfine, we got the default zoom, preview mood, the load behavior, the path where you find it. We will see more settings within the newer filters, like how the GPU is used and everything like that. So if you're trying to go further than only the automatic mode, you can do it manual or start reducing parts where you think there's too much noise reduction in the image. At this point, we find our control points. These control points we will see through the entire Nik collection. So for example, we see it here, there's too much noise reduction, we lose all the structure. So if we're setting a point here, we can manually set the color noise and the contrast noise. With this button here, you change the size. And when you're using a filter like Dfine 2, you see you cannot switch here to the negative control point. So simply press a command or control button on Windows, and then while you're using the slider, you can see here exactly where this viewpoint has been active. So if you can duplicate them, if you want the same setting on the same part, and these viewpoints work in a quite easy way. They're looking for the structure, the color, and the tones of the point where you place them. So if you move it, if you move into here, you will see it's now catching up straight away the water and not anymore the concrete structure yet here before. Even if the size is really big, it's only catching up bottom concrete or colors which are similar to it. So in this case, you could set another control point, but we'll go through this on tomorrow's webinar, because today we will try to get through all the applications of Nik, show you what you can do with each of the Nik filters and how you reach them from each host application. After you would have done this, you see how the noise here, you can set, of course, a point in the image to compare how much Dfine worked at this place. Simply pressing save, and this image will be saved. And you will find it straight away down in your browser from Lightroom. It's done it, as you can see, PhotoLab jumped us just in front of like Capture did and Photoshop. And we find in back our Lightroom. And here it is. And here you can see, here it's now the image with the used Dfine control. If we zoom in 100%, I think it's done a really good job. It kept the structure. We got a nice clean sky compared to the image before. I mean, we're talking about ISO 25600 at nighttime on a Nikon D850. So this way you reach the filter from Lightroom. Most of you guys, I guess, will working with Photoshop. So how does Photoshop works? Photoshop got two options. You can choose to open the filters on a smart object, which we'll show you tomorrow, or simply the way with layers. The first time you open the Nik collection from Photoshop, you will see here on Automat the Nik collection selective tool. You can decide if you want to have it opened all the time. Simply use the settings here. You can choose in which way the filter has to be applied on the composite of the image, create a separate layer, or use the current layer you had. If you once close the selective tool, you can reach it all the time again over File, Automat. And here you see too, it's the merge to HDR Efex Pro 2. On Lightroom and Photoshop, you have to go a different way to open the HDR module, but we will go to that after we show you open a different one here from Photoshop. You could open it over the selective tool from Nik. If you do not like it, even in front, you simply find it over Filters, Nik Collection, Analog Effects, Color Effects. We guess that we start with Analog Effects. It's just the one at the top. And as you can see already, it nearly looks like the same mask we had before using Dfine. Let's have our adjustments on the right, the presets on the left. You can hide or view your adjustment panel. You got the same viewer options, single image, split preview, side by side. You can compare to the original one if you want to, the zoom one, and again, change background color or hide or view your adjustments. Here on the left-hand side, you got different tool combinations, like our presets, like here the classic camera in different ways, motion, black and white, double exposure, or you can create your own tool combinations simply by building a camera and using all the tools you have here on your left-hand side. If you once choose a preset, for example, you're not fixed to use this preset as it has been. You always have the opportunity to use the adjustment panel on the right-hand side to see what I've done in the basic adjustments and maybe change it, even switch it off completely to see what's going on. You can set here the same way of control points to each of the adjustments like we've seen before using on Dfine. Brightness, saturation, contrast. And here in Analog Efex Pro 2, the newer filters, we have always the option, not only through the command, we can simply switch it on to the negative mask, and then you exactly see where you move it, which part of the image will be affected by this basic adjustments. You have these control points for each of the adjustments. For dirt and scratches, in this preset, most of the time I prefer switch it off. Lens vignetting, film types. So even if you choose a preset before, you have the option always to make your own settings to this preset. If you once change a preset and you really prefer the look, you can save your own presets, just simply giving it a name, and it will come up in the custom sessions. You can use them. You can simply delete the presets if you want to. Going back to the cameras, you can import presets from where else. You got an history, so you always can see what you've done to your image. You get an instant help. So here are really the functions are explained again, really in details. If we have a look which settings we have in Analog Efex Pro 2, you see it's a little bit more advanced filter compared to Dfine, so we can change the interface language. If you want to change your language, as you've seen, we haven't had this option using Dfine. You have to reinstall the Nik collections using the language you want to. The other filters, you can simply switch in your settings. The same, the preview mode, the background color, the zoom state. You can decide if your GPU is used for image processing. You can make sure what happens after clicking OK, separate layer or using the same one. After you've done it, you got the brush option too. We will go to this tomorrow in our advanced editing module. There you can see that you not have to use the whole image. You can brush in it using the selective tool from Nik, or you simply use the OK. It creates a new layer, and you can edit this layer as you've been using the other layers in Photoshop. You can change opacity, the fills, Everything can be done. It takes a little bit. It's a D850 file, 45 megapixels. So it takes a bit. Whoever liked this image, when we go through the question and answers, this is Patricia. She will guide you through the question and answer later on.
Hello, good evening. I already thought he forgot to
No.
present me.
I introduced you for the right time, I think. And obviously we have the test session. Even sometimes if you think the filter is nice and you didn't want it to have complete, you can go through the opacity like you've been used editing image in Photoshop. Now, of course, we know it. The Nik collection has been taken over by DxO, and after they've done it, there are few new parts using the Nik collection. So we are now able to use 64-bit technology. It works in all the host applications, and we're now looking forward to get them more improved. So how we open it using DxO PhotoLab. Showing you this, we will simply use our next filter. As you can see here, for PhotoLab users, we got export to application. You can switch over here which one you have, because we want to export to an application. We got it here. Export to VVetsa 2. And you see here, they are not all the filters, but you can simply browse through your applications. There you see the Nik collection, and you simply select from here which one you want to use. I stay on VVetsa in this case. The same we have here, which way to export the image, 16 or 8-bit. We do not resize it, and we use our Adobe RGB color profile. Here now we got exactly the same behavior. The host application creates a pixel-based image, in our case a TIFF file, that will show up in a minute over there. It takes a little bit, of course, because we're now doing the whole editing. So the optical module from PhotoLab and everything works before we hand it over to our host application. And here we are in VVetsa 2. As you can see, the same like we had in the filters before. The viewers, your normal tools, selecting tool, pan tool, zoom in and out, hide and bring in back the toolbar. The settings here, you see these are the settings we've seen before in Nik Dfine. So VVetsa doesn't show us all the options. VVetsa is our tool when you go to brightness, contrast, saturation, and structure. And as you can see simply here, you can enhance and expand all the sliders. Then we got the shadow adjustments, warmth, red, green, blue, and hue. We get control points as we had before, and levels and curves. Our control points behave a little bit different compared to the ones we had before, because after we choose one, you can see you can go here to the negative part as well. We also can simply select the color where it's editing, you see? So we change the colors and everything. Going back to the control point, we can really create our here. And you see on this toolbar, it now goes to selective. This means what we do here, it's only affecting this part of the image. We overdone it a little bit, so we're getting rid of this viewpoint. If you want to delete one, simply select it and press the delete button on your keyboard, or use the delete button on the task panel. Then it goes directly back to global, because we do not have viewpoints. If we set up viewpoints, and we will see tomorrow again, advanced one, how we work with viewpoints in groups. You got different viewpoints. You can add them. You can group them. And when you want to go back to global, you simply use Command or Select on the Windows and press and click in the image. So we're back on global. Here we can do our global settings and really just play with the software. I mean, we're talking about digital photography. There's nothing you can destroy. Just to see what the slider is doing, please try and get used to it. Do as much editing as you can and edit the image in the way you like it. So even after you've done global settings first, you can of course add a viewpoint, set them where, see how it's been affecting. In this case, it would be only the bottom, but you could even go in here and lighten it up a little bit. As you can see, it's like lightening up the shadows. After you edit your image using Vivetta, you're completely back. Like all other filters, simply use save. The image will be processed and it will show up in our DxO PhotoLab panel. Sometimes not directly. This depends because it takes a while for the refreshing. As you can see, we haven't it here yet. So if you go back to another module, this always takes some, but DxO is improving it so it goes a little bit quicker. As we can see here, it pops up. And this is the way you enter it from PhotoLab. So as I know, a lot of people think that they only can use the Nik filters for editing one image. But as I will show you now, you can edit more than one images at the same time, no matter which host application you're using. For example, we choose two complete different images and we want to edit them now in a different filter, like, for example, to see the better effect, we will use in this case Silver Efex Pro 2. Of course, we have here the same edit photo preset as it asked us in the first place. And after we've done it, and as you see, I even got 3 selected images. So it will open all 3 in Silver Efex Pro 2. And if I want to edit them exactly the same way for a same look, like they would all have been portraits or all have been shots from Paris or all have been different ones, you can edit only one of the images. And now it's pre-processing the next one. Find a preset if you want to, like Silver Efex, the same here, different presets, full-size viewer, side-by-side, compare tools, zoom tools. Here now we got brightness, contrast, and structure too, but you see this little option button here, so you can have the brightness controlled in the highlights, in the midtones, the shadows, the dynamic brightness. The same is for the contrast. Amplify the whites, amplify the blacks, getting a soft contrast on here too, maybe. You see, we got much more options for brightness and contrast as we had before. The same is for structure. More structure in the highlights, midtones. Sometimes you only want to have in the shadows for not destroying or not getting too much details here in this shot. You can protect areas, shadows and highlights. Of course, like all our software, you have the viewpoint technology here with all the sliders. We have the color filters as we've been used to analog photography, red filters, orange filters, yellow filters, and of course you can change the hue and the strength of the simply filters. We got film types from neutral to selective old shots we know from analog film. And we will see more filters even to color when we come to color effects later on. So even after you choose the filter, you can here decide if you want to have the grain, sensitivity of the filter. So you see you got a lot of options working with Silver Efex Pro. The toning, vignetting, burned edges, image borders. Of course, as you have with all the other options, you can create your custom presets as we saw before. But because I want to not only show you Silver Efex Pro 2, I'll now show you how you can simply edit all images at the same time. Simply press Save All. And now the software is saving and editing all 3 images at the same time. And as you can see, it always, of course, takes a bit. I'm sitting here on them just in case somebody wants to know. It's a late MacBook Pro, 16 GB of RAM, and 1.5 GB graphic card. Saving image 2. And now, of course, it's loading the third one we haven't had. So if you wanted to add a lot of images using the batch function of Nik filters, do yourself a favor, select them first, do the editing, and then simply get yourself a cup of coffee and take your time. I mean, it is fast for digital Word, but I mean, we're talking about large raw files or TIFF files in this case. It always takes a bit of time. And after it's been here, the behavior you see now, the switching forward and backwards, you're doing it all. It's only because I have opened Lightroom and all the other stuffs at the same time. And now we see here our images, all 3 has been edited in the same contrasty way using the Silver Efex Pro. Okay, which filters? We do have more. Oh, we haven't showed you, I think, Capture One. So Capture One works also using the Nik filters as a host application. You simply choose your images. You can choose more if you want to. You got the file, edit with. Let's open the window and you can choose your Nik application you want to have opened at this time. The same here, we got the format, the TIFF files, the color space, and a fixed scale. And I have to say, yes, we want to do that this way. It's doing the same. It's exporting a TIFF file to the Nik application. And here it is. As you see, there's no difference whichever host application you're using. Using Color Efex Pro 4 has a black and white conversion tool as well, and plenty of more filters, as you can see here. And I'm sure in the future we will have more webinars coming up with only explaining you each of them. Here we'll go quick through, same panel working at. Of course, the same behavior, control points, positive, negative control points to be set. For color effects, you always got here, you see a preview of different ways for black and white, and you got this for all effects. If you want to see how the contrast color range is working, you can see the presets we have for here: red, yellow, green, blue, magenta. After you prefer one, I think it's a little bit too much. After you went on one image with simply adding a filter, you can add a next filter to the same image. And the new filter, of course, will have new control points, not affecting the filter up in front. This way, you can create again your own presets by get a combination of different filters for your images you prefer, and simply save it as save receipt. And you see, simply do the same. It's a test session, pressing OK, and you would have a new preset creating if you want to edit more images the same way. Simply pressing by delete and it's gone again. here with our receipts we had before already in the presets, and we've gone back on the Color Efex Pro. We're back to all different filters from Color Efex Pro. The same as been before, it's a save button. Here underneath we got the settings, the newer version as we see, where you can change the interface language, decide if you use the GPU for image processing, and pressing save is saving the image. So after you've been used to one of the filters from the Nik collection, it should be easy for you to get through all the other ones. And after it saved the image, you can see it here directly here, the TIFF file now in our image browser, the edit version using Capture 111. So you can use your Nik filters using Capture 111 too. We quit it at this time, going back to our other filters, like we have another tool, of course. This is our HDR tool. And if we have a look how it works, we decide different images. As we've seen before in Lightroom or Photoshop, I have to enter it through Merge tool. In PhotoLab, I could simply select all 4 of them and go there and edit it over the export to application file directly to the HDR. When we have Lightroom and we have the images, we have to go here through our export with presets to enter HDR Efex Pro 2. And if we have a look how we do it using Photoshop, we have different ways. We can, for example, first open the images. So we have a look if they're all okay. They will open in Adobe Camera Raw. As I told you before, you have to edit your raw files first to use them in the actual Nik collection. So we select all 4 of them, open these images, and Photoshop opens all the 4. Now we can say them merge to HDR Efex Pro 2. It's like File, Automat, Merge to HDR. After we've done that, the first option comes up and tells us open new files, remove files, or simply add the open files we already have opened. And you see create smart object, as we will talk about tomorrow. All Nik applications are able to handle smart objects. We open the files, go into the merge dialog. It's now writing TIFFs out of all 4 raw files, which will take a bit. Well, we're sorry, just drank a bit. And after I've done that, we will see another dialog opening. Because as you know, you can shoot HDRs freehand, you can shoot them using a tripod. Sometimes you have people walking around the images. So if you're unluckily, you have a ghosting in your image. But you can get rid of that, as we can see in a second, from our HDR Efex Pro 2 dialog. And it will be there in a second, and we see it here. Alignment. This means select this if you haven't used the tripod. but we use the tripod, so we can switch it off. Ghost reduction. There is no person running around in this image, but I will use a little bit of ghost reduction because it was a really cloudy and windy day. So the clouds are moving. You give him a ghost reference image, so we'll have a look at watching at this guy, and we give, say, 40%, and it's okay. If you have problems with chromatic aberrations, you can select it on or off. After you've done that, you can create your HDR. And as we see here, it's again the same user interface like all the other Nik applications. It says presets on the left side. I will show you in a second. Here they are, the manuals on the right. You also can create your customs ones. You can import your presets. You got your setting tool, as you saw before. You can make sure if you always use a tripod or not. For example, you can always say use your last settings or on or off, so you do not have to do the selection every time you open it. Here we have some presets, and even after you choose one, you of course got the opportunity here on your control panel to edit it. You have the tone compression. So if you do not want to have such an artistic HDR, you can work with the sliders, normal, subtle, then it goes even to off or really strong. You see you got all the options here. You can change the tonality from the exposure completely to getting shadows. Or highlights. You can work with the contrast of the image. You can say what happens to the blacks and the whites. So as you see, you do not get a completely edited HDR. You got the option really to work every single part manual if you want to. You got control points, of course. You got the finishing, vignetting, and the graduate neutral density. This means, as you know from analog photography with using filters, you can choose the upper tonality, the lower one. You can change the kind of how they blend, the vertical shift. Even can rotate it, but I think I've done a quite good job by shooting the image. So we do not need this here. And by simply pressing OK, there will be a new layer created and a new image using Photoshop. So as we can see, saving image should be done in a second, and the image shows up in Photoshop as a new HDR image. As I said before, the way using Lightroom would have been select your images, go to File, export with preset, and then using HDR Efex Pro 2. The way doing it using PhotoLab would be selecting all 4 images and then simply export to application and choose here HDR Efex Pro 2. So let's have a look which filters we're still missing. We had a look at the Analog Efex Pro 2, at Color Efex Pro 2, or Noise Reduction Dfine 2, the HDR Efex Pro 2, Silver Efex and Vivezza. Now what is left? It's a Sharpener Pro 3 output and raw pre-sharpening. So in this case, we will start having a look at the output sharpener. As I said before, I think the raw pre-sharpener is doing a really good work today using your raw conversion system of your choice. So if you choose the filter output sharpener, we see again, as we use the viewers, switching on a preview on or off, what I want to see, the sharpened image, sharpening soft proof, overlaying. I can brush in it, as we will see tomorrow. Again, the settings. And what is the sharpener doing? We can choose between a display, an inkjet. So here we can see the paper type, the viewing distance, the printer resolution, continuous tones, half-tone, hybrid device. So you know at this time which way your image will be presented, and you have to really sharpen it. If you want to have the best result, always sharpen your images for the way you have a look. In this case, we're talking about the display. We got the adaptive sharpening. We got the strength of our sharpening. We can control structure. We can have a local contrast controlled. We always see it under here now 100% view, what it's doing really with the sharpening. I think it's doing a really, really good job. And we also have the focus. So if you have an image where it's slightly out of focus, like you're doing a portrait with an open aperture, and you want to have the eyes really sharp and the sharpness a little bit gets dropped up in the front or behind, you can use the focus control to unsharp the part of the image which is sharp now and put the sharpened area a little bit behind or up in front, so you get what you wanted. Of course, as we know, we have control points. Same behavior like all control points. Like you want to have more structure in the whites, for example, you can do that this way using the control points here. As we know from all the Nik collection before, if you want to duplicate them, as you can see, it works here like all the other options. And simply pressing on OK creates now in Photoshop a new layer. You can handle it. So this was our first look at the Nik collection and the filters. As you can see, simply get used to one of the Nik collection and you should be able to work with all of them.